Hey guys, Brad Clark here. Hey, I got an email request about doing a video for issues with plantar fasciitis and pain and how to deal with it. So that's what this topic is going to be on today. It should be a quick one, but I kind of want to go over what plantar fasciitis is and how you can deal with it at home on your own. So thanks for joining us. Let's get to it. Go. Okay, so we're over here at the whiteboard. I promise you this is a picture of a foot. Please don't be too mean about my drawing in the comments section. But the first thing I want to go over is what is plantar fasciitis? Well, it's inflammation in the fascia of the foot. We know that because it ends with itis. Anything that's got itis on it is inflammation, whether it's fasciitis, whether it's tendonitis, gastritis, anything like that, it means we have inflammation. So the question now we have is, what is the fascia? Well, the fascia is the connective tissue in the bottom of the foot that kind of holds everything in place. And what happens is it becomes inflamed for one reason or another. So your next question may be, well, why does my fascia become inflamed? Well, there's a lot of reasons. It can become inflamed from overuse. Maybe you're training for a 5K or a half marathon or a marathon. Your foot's not used to all that activity. So as a response, it becomes injured and gets inflamed. It may be from it being in a weird position all day. Maybe you need arch support in your shoes, but you don't have any. So it's in a stretched, elongated position for longer than it can stand. Right? There's lots of reasons that it can become inflamed, but typically when it does, you're going to get this pain down here around the heel area. That's why it's called plantar fasciitis, right? So how do we deal with this? Well, there's a few ways. Number one, as long as you're not adverse to taking over-the-counter medication, an anti-inflammatory can help with this. If you aren't sure if an over-the-counter medication is right for you, I'd recommend reaching out to your family care physician. There's a few ways you can do that. Sometimes just call or email the office and they'll be able to answer it for you. But you can also reach out to them through MyChart. A lot of times that's the quickest and fastest way to get a hold of a doctor. But they'll be able to answer for you whether or not something like ibuprofen is a good answer for your plantar fasciitis issue. Otherwise, the way we would treat it is how we would treat inflammation in just about any other part of our body, and that's through RICE, and I'm going to write it down. So RICE is an acronym for a few things. The R is for rest. So what we want to do is take time off of our foot so that it has an ability and the time it needs to heal and get better. We're not putting it under strain. We're not running the risk of re-injuring it any further than it already is. Rest is the first thing that you should be doing. I stands for ice. The reason ice is important is for a couple of reasons. Inflammation is basically when inflammatory fluid goes into an area that is affected by an injury and it sits there to try to help that spot heal. Well, if we get too much inflammatory fluid in there, that's when we get the inflammation, that's when we get the pain and things like that. Ice helps by, number one, overriding the pain symptoms that we feel by instead interacting with our nerve endings to send a sensation of cold. So if you have an injury and you put ice on it really quickly and it makes the pain go away, it's because instead of your nerves telling your brain, hey, something hurts here, it's instead telling it, hey, something's cold there. For a lot of people, that sensation of cold is much more palatable to their brain than pain is. The other reason ice is important is because it's what we call a vasoconstrictor. What it's going to do is it's going to shrink the openings in our capillaries and our other pathways so that less inflammatory fluid can get in there, so it reduces the symptoms of our inflammation. Next one is C, that's compression. I'm not writing that whole thing out. What compression does is it's also going to help constrict the area for which that inflammatory fluid can get into. So it's going to reduce the swelling by both not letting as much swelling fluid into the area, but it's also going to help push out some of the fluid that may have already collected in our affected area, in this case the heel. You can compress this area with a compression sock or an ACE bandage wrapped around the affected area. That'll help move some of that inflammatory fluid out and help get rid of some of that pain. The last one is elevation, which I'm also not going to try to write on here upside down. But elevation works much in the same way that compression does. We elevate the affected area, and that helps that inflammatory fluid drain out of the injured area. So again, if we need to reduce the swelling in an inflamed area like the fascia, elevation will help. I'll give you a couple of other tips. One that I really like is to take a golf ball and put it in the freezer. Wait till it gets really cold and then roll that golf ball out across the bottom of the foot. You can do that while you're just sitting in your chair watching TV. The reason that helps really well is because there's a bunch of little bones in our foot, and the golf ball is nice and small, so it can kind of get in between those areas a little bit and help push out some of that inflammatory fluid that maybe just a simple ACE bandage or elevation won't do for us. And because it's frozen, we're going to get the same effect that we would get from ice. It's going to override some of those pain symptoms and send instead the symptom of it being cold. If the golf ball is too much for you, you can also use a frozen water bottle. A lot of times that's a little bit easier for people who say the golf ball hurts a little too much. Both of those work really well in terms of massaging some of that fluid out and helping reduce swelling. You can also just stretch the affected area. A really good way to stretch this is just with a simple calf stretch. Either put the front of your foot on a stair or a wall and then lean into that stretch. That will help stretch out some of this fascia. As far as preventing it in the future, I would recommend talking to your family doctor. He may recommend that you go see a foot doctor to go further than this, especially if your plantar fasciitis is chronic, if it's coming back every couple of months and there's just nothing you can do about it. There may be special shoes or something that you can wear to help prevent it more long term. Otherwise, that is just a simple kind of let's go over what plantar fasciitis is. If you have any further questions, you can reach out to us at virtualwellness@trihealth.com. But otherwise, I thank you for joining us, and I hope this was helpful to you.